So the House is moving on now to a private member's bill, and it's the Animal Protection related to Hares Bill 2015, and I'd like to ask Deputy Maureen O'Sullivan to move the bill, and to you have 15 minutes, Deputy.
Thank you. I move the bill, ask Ceann Comhairle.
For second stage.
To second, yeah.
That's agreed.
Thank you. Once again, the Dáil has an opportunity to put an end to this cruel practice of live hare coursing. And there is no doubt about it, it is cruel and it is animal abuse. And I'm struck by the contradictions. First of all, we live in a country of great natural beauty, and yet we treat animals like hares appallingly. The contradiction and the irony, which I've mentioned already, that we have the Minister for Arts issuing licences to capture, to net hares. And how is this part of the artistic and cultural agenda of this country to net hares, keep them in captivity for several weeks before releasing them into a field to be chased and to be hunted by the greyhound? There's also the contradiction in calling this a sport, because to me, sport is about fairness, it's about skill and talent, it's about matching people or teams of pretty similar ability or standard of play. And when I look at coursing, I look at a small, slight animal versus a much, much bigger and stronger animal. The average weight of the hare is about £6, the average weight of a greyhound is £60 plus. And I've used the analogy that it's almost like asking Katie Taylor to get into the ring with a Mike Tyson figure or a sumo wrestler. And there's the contradiction that the hare is a protected species under the Wildlife Act, and yet we allow wanton cruelty to the hare. There's a contradiction that we have an animal and welfare bill, the ethos of which is one of preventing cruelty to animals and unnecessary suffering to animals, and yet this bill exempts hares. And then there's the other contradiction, and I'm putting it in the form of a question. There are owners of greyhounds who dislike coursing, but yet in order to register their greyhounds for racing, they have to do so with the Irish Coursing Club. And even though they object to their money being used for coursing, nevertheless, they have to support that organisation financially. And then there is the other contradiction that we pride ourselves on our uniqueness. And we are unique in many ways, and we're special, and I do believe there's a special sense of Irishness. But there's another way in which we are unique now, and it most certainly is not special, that we're one of only 3 countries in Europe that have live hare coursing. And we are the only country in these Isles with live hare coursing because it's banned in England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. So if we look at the facts, documented year after year, and we get these facts from various sources, rangers from the National Parks and Wildlife Services, who don't have enough rangers to cover all the coursing meetings, and we also get the facts from vets and facts from coursers. And surprise, there are discrepancies in the reports from both rangers and coursers, even though they're describing the same meeting. These facts are sourced through freedom of information with great difficulty, and I have to ask why the difficulty in getting the facts. For example, at one meeting, the ranger reported 14 hares were hit, 6 badly, with 1 dying of injuries and 3 put down. At the same meeting, the coursers reported 12 hares, quote, requiring assistance, which is a euphemism for hares being hit and mauled. At another coursing event, the Rangers report said there were 5 hares struck by dogs, but the coursers report said there were 2 hares requiring assistance. So if the courser is prepared to minimise the number of incidents when they know the ranger is there, how can they be depended on to report accurately when the ranger is not there? December of last year, loads of meetings, and we have reports, and I'm just giving a sense of them. 7 hares struck, 3 dying of injuries. Another one, 3 hares struck, 2 being put down. Another, 6 hares mauled, and another, 3 put down, 5 needing treatment by the vet. And so on and so on, similar figures every single year. And they are examples of wanton cruelty. People who have concerns about animal welfare, they try to enter the meetings, and when they try to film it, they're subject to harassment and intimidation. But nevertheless, they persist. And there's very significant video footage of hares being mauled. We can hear the screeches of pain from the hares, and that's available on social media to be seen or heard. Coursing clubs are known to make the work of the rangers difficult, the work of the rangers to ensure that rules and regulations as per the licence are applied. At a particular coursing meeting, ICABs, and I want to acknowledge the work that they have done, they managed to film the meeting, but ended up being assaulted by a courser. They had the camera taken from them. When the camera was returned by the Gardaí, the memory card was missing. At that meeting, the hares were having trouble accessing escape and were pursued by the greyhounds for considerable lengths of times. There were no dates for hare captures at that particular meeting, which is required, so it's not known how long the coursers had those hares in their possession. There's also an evidence of the inspectors being impeded in their work by the coursers. The cruelty, though, doesn't just begin at the coursing meeting. It begins much sooner, when the licence to net hares is granted by the Minister for Arts. And in spite of those reports of the injuries and the deaths of hares at coursing meetings, in spite of the extensive opposition to live hare coursing in this country and abroad, the licences continue to be issued and hares are snatched from their natural habitat. And even though there have been breaches of that Wildlife Act regarding the netting and the licences, which I have brought to the attention of the Minister continues to issue licences. Now, if a nightclub or a pub breach terms of their licence, it will be very difficult, if not impossible, for them to have their licences renewed, but not when it comes to coursing. Our Minister doesn't appear to have any qualms, and it's carry on regardless. So why would anyone stick to the terms of the licence when they know that they can get away with doing what they like, when they like, which is exactly what they do? I'm also getting very disturbing information from concerned people in rural Ireland about the use of technology, of lasers and also of smoke bombs being used to capture hares. And I'm told there is an extremely lucrative hare trade. Now, while the greyhounds cannot bite the hares, greyhounds have very sharp, long nails. So imagine those nails eating into your skin, eating into your body. Serious injuries also occur through collision and through the tossing of the hares. And I am not making this up. I repeat, we have video and we have photographic evidence of all of this. Also, but less apparent, are the effects of stress myopathy, and it's the vets who give me the information on this. It's a life-threatening condition for the hare during captivity. After netting and during and after the chase, and for those fortunate enough to escape, the quote from the vet for the Irish Coursing Club was, "It's impossible to completely avoid stress in hares once you manhandle them and take them out of their natural environment. The stress starts," he explains, "from the minute you take the hare out of his form until it's landed in the net. That's followed by rough handling, boxing and transporting, all alien to a small creature used to the freedom of the fields." Another vet made the point, and I quote, that under the influence of stress, the hare's immune system is compromised. Hares are significantly stressed when corralled and coursed, and this combination of circumstances has resulted in the deaths of hares. Now, there are landowners and farmers who are against netting, who are against having their farms and their lands invaded by those out to net and trap the hares. But there is no protection for them as they object to the netting. We have confirmation, for example, in 1 year when 2 golf clubs, 1 semi-state body, a caravan park and a monastic centre had hares netted and trapped on their lands without their permission, and nothing was done about that. There was no recourse for them. And I want to stress there is an alternative to live hare coursing, and we see that in Australia and in the United States with very successful rag coursing. So in the context of all that suffering for the hares, also injuries to the greyhounds, opposition and criticism from landowners and farmers to the invasion of their lands, but still we persist in this extremely inhumane practice. And I read with incredulity at the statements from some political parties, but I do acknowledge I'd written to all the whips and 2 of them got back to me, or 3 actually. One party is opposed to the infliction of cruelty to animals, especially for purposes of entertainment. But yet, they're not going to support my bill to ban live hare coursing. They believe that Ireland have coursing practices that are regulated to minimise unnecessary suffering to the animal. And another political party told me that there are existing strict regulatory framework which ensures the highest animal welfare standards. Well, my answer is, tell that to the hare, that the greyhound is muzzled, and so the greyhound cannot kill it. It can only toss it in the air and break its bones. Now, I'm told that we have enforcement of existing regulations, and hares can only be collected for coursing by ICC-affiliated clubs in accordance with the terms of the licence. I've pointed out, we've evidence that that is not happening, so it's all the more reason to stop this cruel practice. Coursing is also allowed during adverse weather conditions, and it was with great difficulty that we got a coursing meeting postponed, mind you, because of the adverse weather conditions. So I would like to see it in the licence, if we still have this, that there should be an automatic suspension, that it is suspended during spells of freezing weather, hailstorms and heavy winds. And that's in the interest of both the welfare of the greyhound and the hare. 2 years ago, there were 6 greyhounds in the National Hare Coursing Festival who tested positive for banned substances. There's a really sinister dimension to hare coursing when I read that. There's no testing for illegal substances at the smaller coursing events. So if there were, I wonder what would be found. So much for our animal-loving greyhound owners when they're using performance-enhancing drugs for the greyhounds. The Department of Agriculture should demand more testing or demand more regulation on this. And I want to go back. There are injuries to the greyhounds as well. We have a dreadful attitude towards greyhounds in this country also, and I will mention that here. We've had the recent debacle of greyhounds being shipped off to Macau, where there are no animal welfare considerations whatsoever. Now, I've met loads of greyhounds on these protests, and they also are the most gentle of creature. And they, too, I think, are being put into an environment where they are expected to hunt. And again, this is just something that does not sit easy. Now, I want to ask those who go coursing. I mean, what do you do at the coursing meeting when the greyhound has raced and chased around the field after the hare, and then finally catches it, tosses it in the air, and then the hare falls? Is that when the cheering and the clapping starts? And is that when you collect your money from the betting that goes on? One other question, and it's this: who is responsible for the injury and the death of a protected species? Because the hare is protected under the Wildlife Act. So who's responsible when the hare is injured or when the hare dies from a greyhound? Is it the greyhound's owner? Is it the licensee of the event? Is it the landowner where the event is taking place? Is it the local authority? Is it the department? Is it the minister who signed the licence? And I think we're coming to the case now where somebody will take a case when hares are injured and they are killed, which is totally against the National Wildlife Act. Is clochta cruolacha cursoil gira. Agus tá sé docreta go bhfuil an clochta seo ag leanúint raig inniu. Nach bhfuil meas a gcuin ar dúlra agus ar nairacht. Now, we were told coming into this Dáil that we were going to have a new politics, and we were going to see an awful lot more free votes. This is an ideal opportunity to give free votes, because there are people in this House who are against live hare coursing. Now, I know there are people who are for it, but I believe in democracy, and I do believe if we had a free vote that it would be much fairer to this bill that I am proposing here tonight. So I don't know what we're afraid of by giving a free vote on this issue. The sky is not going to fall if there is a ban on live hare coursing. Life will go on, but it will be a much, much better life for both the hares and the greyhounds.